There was just enough snow to make it a miserable commute during rush hour, but the worst of the latest brush with winter is over. Good afternoon. The snowfall left roads slick and traffic crawling in many areas.
But no major problems have been reported. It was one of those days when taking the dog out to do its business seemed to take a little too long, and people we spoke with this morning are hoping Wiarts and Willie's prediction of an early spring will come true.
You know what? I have faith in Willie, and I think he's going to bring the power to bring that spring to us as soon as he can.
She believes in Willie. By the midway point of rush hour, the highway lanes of a number of major routes were simply wet, but the plows and salters were getting a workout, and the OPP issued a caution about driving conditions.
If you are out on the roads, please make sure you're giving yourself lots of following distance and you're able to slow down, change lanes, or stop depending on the traffic conditions ahead of you. They are talking about freezing rain continuing through the morning and afternoon, which could make for a slippery afternoon commute as well.
The words of the day were sloppy and slow for many drivers. And we have a CTV News exclusive today with a behind-the-scenes look at how Pearson Airport keeps air traffic moving. CTV's Mike Walker is at Pearson Airport with more.
On a day like this, it's all hands on deck. Crews are out clearing the airfield as soon as the snow starts to accumulate. To give you an idea of just how important this job is, a plane takes off and lands here at Pearson Airport every minute. Now, over the past year, Pearson Airport has bolstered its snow clearing equipment and has hired more staff. There's 161 pieces of equipment, including these massive plows. About 8 or 10 of them will go out in tandem at a time, clearing the airfields, an area of roughly 5 million square meters. To put in perspective how big that job is, that is the equivalent of 3,300 NHL-sized ice rinks. Now, we will be going out with them later today to see them in action, learn how they do the job. So far today, Pearson Airport tells me about 2 centimeters of snow has fallen, and that has only resulted in minor delays. Reporting at Pearson Airport, I'm Mike Walker. Back to you.
Thank you, Mike. Well, that is good to hear. Not much in the way of delays. Let's take a live look at the city this afternoon, looking at Nathan Phillips Square. There are people outside skating this hour. It is wet, it's messy, and it is important to note there is a freezing drizzle advisory still in effect. Jessica Smith is here with a look at the conditions. What do we need to know, Jess?
The bulk of the worst of it is done, Michelle, but we are still holding on to that freezing drizzle advisory as we see those temperatures kind of hovering around the freezing mark as we speak. The good news is it does warm up into the afternoon and it gets a little bit easier to commute, but it is going to get windy. So we lose the active weather and we get the wind. We are watching for the bulk of the system to push its way east. Behind it, a little bit cooler air for now. We're still under that freezing drizzle advisory for a good portion of southern Ontario, parts of eastern Ontario, and in towards London as well. As we head in towards the afternoon, things get a little bit better, but you still have to keep in mind that that advisory is likely in place until at least the midpoint of our afternoon. Right now, temperature-wise, it is a little cooler out there, but the wind chill not as much of a factor currently. But we are seeing those winds pick up into the afternoon. So we lose the active weather, but we get the wind. Coming up, I'll have a full look at your long-range forecast, what you can expect for the rest of the week. But right now, it's back over to Nathan.
Thank you, Jess.
Thanks.
Still to come, the Premier continues to make the rounds on American TV in a bid to fend off the tariff threat. And we'll have the latest from the Ontario election campaign.
Now to yet another frightening smash and grab robbery, this time at a cell phone store in Scarborough. The robbery happened near Kingston and McCowan just before 5 p.m. Video shows the suspects confront the store owner, who is a cancer patient and only recently returned to work, as well as his 19-year-old son. Fortunately, they were not injured, but the incident left both shaken. And they told CTV News they also have another store that was robbed on January 19th.
One of the masked individuals was holding open the door. 3 others came in, 2 with hammers, and before we knew anything, they're just smashing all over the place, you know. Me and my dad were begging them to stop. They could have what they want, just don't cause any property damage.
I'm concerned, like, I don't know how we survive. I don't have word to say. This is, that time I'm shocked. I'm patient, I explain you. So that time I'm shocked. So I don't know how we run our business now.
The suspect smashed several display cases and made off with merchandise worth about $40,000. According to the owner, police are asking anyone with information to come forward.
Now to a shooting in Moss Park that has left one person dead.
Police are still on the hunt for a suspect in the second fatal shooting in 2 days. Our John Musselman joins us live now from police headquarters with more. John.
Well, Michelle, Homicide Squad is looking at these two cases at either ends of the city. A man last night shot near Sherbourne and Queen, a young teenager shot in Etobicoke. The shooting happened just after 8 p.m. last night near the intersection of Queen Street East and Sherbourne Street. When police arrived, they found a man with serious gunshot wounds. He was rushed to hospital in critical condition, but he did not survive.
If you happen to be in the area and may have information about the shooting or may have video, please contact 51 Division at 416-808-5100 or the Homicide and Missing Persons Unit at 416-808-7400.
This is the second homicide in as many days. A 16-year-old boy was shot and killed at this high-rise apartment building in Etobicoke on Tuesday evening. He has since been identified as Isaiah Foga. The shooting involves several floors in the building on Capri Road. That's near Rathburn and the East Mall.
First, the fire alarm went off, and then all of a sudden, me and my family hear these loud bangs on our door, so we go to see who it is, and then it's these two guys saying, call 911.
It's quite dramatic. The little kids are scared. They were making comments over last night.
The motive for the shooting remains under investigation. And the shooting on Queen Street, police say it appears to be a targeted incident. They're still looking for information on possibly one suspect. Two suspects are still outstanding in the Etobicoke homicide. Reporting live, I'm John Musselman. I'll send it back to you.
All right, thank you, John. Dozens more charges have been laid against two suspects in connection with rock-throwing incidents in Markham and Whitchurch-Stouffville. A 17-year-old boy and an 18-year-old man are now charged with 31 additional counts of mischief under $5,000. The 17-year-old is also charged with one count of assault with a weapon. Both suspects were charged late last month in connection with the York Regional Police investigation into more than 24 rock-throwing incidents. The incidents began last July, some of which targeted moving vehicles.
So we are aware of a total of 29 incidents that date back to July 2024. These two males, a 17-year-old and 18-year-old, are now responsible for at least 20 of these incidents. And so there are 9 incidents still outstanding, and our investigators continue to work to figure out who is responsible for the 9 additional incidents.
Meanwhile, the OPP is investigating 11 similar incidents on Highway 48 in Markham. In one case, a driver was hit by a rock, causing them to crash. 2 people were critically injured as a result of the collision. So far, no charges have been laid in these incidents.
Toronto police have arrested a physician accused of sexually assaulting a patient at a Scarborough medical clinic. Police say the alleged incident happened in November of 2023 at a clinic near Tapscott and Nielsen Road. It was reported a woman was sexually assaulted by a dermatologist during an examination on January 31st of this year. The sex crimes unit says it arrested 76-year-old Paul Adam of Toronto on a charge of sexual assault. Investigators believe there may be other victims who have yet to come forward. Meanwhile, the York Regional Police Special Victims Unit is searching for this suspect. He's wanted in an alleged sexual assault on a bus in Vaughan last Thursday. Investigators say he boarded the public transit vehicle around 4:30 p.m. near Kipling and Highway 7 and sat next to a victim before touching her in a sexual manner. He exited the bus at Vaughan Metropolitan Centre just before 5. If you recognize him, you're asked to contact police or Crime Stoppers.
And provincial police say they've seized large quantities of fentanyl and cocaine after a drug trafficking investigation in Peterborough. Police share these images showing the suspected drugs, paraphernalia, and cash, including an approximate 1.5 kilograms of suspected fentanyl and slightly more cocaine. OPP say they began investigating drug trafficking throughout Peterborough and the surrounding area last summer. Then, a few days ago, they executed 5 search warrants across Peterborough, Durham Region, and York Region. 26-year-old Tarath Odia faces multiple drug trafficking charges and one of possession of property obtained by crime.
Now to the Ontario election campaign trail.
Premier Ford was still making the rounds on American TV before his campaign stops, and opposition leaders are on the campaign trail. CTV's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Siobhan Morris joins us now live with more details. Siobhan.
Well, this day began with Doug Ford acting not in his capacity as election candidate, but as Premier of Ontario, appearing on CNN to talk about that still lingering tariff threat. Ford was asked what he believes is necessary to stave off that threat for good.
Well, Kate, what I understand, it's the border. I've agreed we have to tighten up the border on both sides, by the way. You know, we talk about fentanyl per capita. We have as many deaths as fentanyl as the U.S. But compared to our friends south of the border, Mexico, it's 0.001%. And my point is that's too much.
The Liberal leader returned to her primary focus for this campaign, and that is health care. Bonnie Crombie made a stop in Scarborough this morning, really putting a focus on her pledge to connect every Ontarian to a doctor in the next 4 years. A promise she says will cost $3.1 billion. We do know that there is a lot of gap to fill here. Some 2.5 million Ontarians are without access to primary care.
Helping more students just entering medical schools choose to stay with family medicine rather than go off to one of those other disciplines. Keeping the family doctors that we do have by ensuring that they have the right compensation. 2, we're going to build out the Ontario Health Team Network so you have access to more care closer to home when you need it.
Green Party leader Mike Schreiner is in his home riding of Guelph before heading off to Hamilton. He's talking about addressing what he calls a crisis in caring, talking about needing to add supports for our most vulnerable.
Immediately doubling ODSP and OW rates to get rid of legislated poverty in this province. Second, we will end the clawbacks for people with disabilities. It is wrong that somebody is penalized for living with somebody who they love and have their disability benefits clawed back.
NDP leader Marit Stiles is making a campaign stop in Hamilton this hour before heading to Sault Ste. Marie. Later this afternoon, we are expecting an announcement from Progressive Conservative Doug Ford in Waterloo. Reporting live from Queen's Park, I'm Siobhan Morris. Nathan and Michelle, back to you.
Thank you, Siobhan. There's a new development in the push to buy Canadian. A major union is urging grocers to make Canadian products a priority when stocking their shelves. Unifor National President Lana Payne joins us live now to talk about it. Lana, thanks for being with us. What do you want to see happen?
Thank you. Thanks, Michelle. It's, I think, incredibly important that we make it as easy as possible for Canadians to support their country right now. And one of the ways we can do that is to have the big grocers make it easy to know what is made in Canada, what is a product of Canada, have special displays, stock more Canadian products if they can, and in the long term, look at their own supply chain in terms of how we can increase the number of Canadian products that are available for Canadians.
So you wrote a letter to the big CEOs of major grocery stores. Have you heard back yet? What are you expecting here? Because, of course, these grocery chains are huge and they do have a lot of influence.
They do. Haven't heard back yet, but I expect to. We have a bargaining relationship with all of them. We represent about 11,000 grocery store workers across the country. But really what we have seen here in the past days and weeks has been this incredible growing unity by Canadians, expressing that unity in any number of ways, including a push to buy Canadian. And also, I would say from our union, a push to make Canadian and make sure we have governments focusing on that, all of us focusing on that. But it's incredible to have this kind of solidarity that's important to the struggle that we're in right now as we push back against these tariffs on Canadian jobs, a threat on Canadian jobs and on our economy.
And we just heard what was happening on the campaign trail today. I know jobs are core to everything that you do. What do you think we could be doing right now to protect jobs?
Well, I mean, obviously the tariff fight is one thing, and that has to continue in terms of what we have to do south of the border to convince Americans and American politicians and businesses that this is also a threat on their economy and on the jobs of many American workers. But there's a lot that Canada can do right now. We spend billions and billions and billions of dollars a year at all levels of government on procurement, and we can really make a push to spend that money to build things in Canada and employ Canadian workers in doing so. But I would say to you that in the long term, we also have to look at putting in place solid industrial plans around our economy and making sure that we are building for the long term a resilient Canadian economy that protects Canadian workers into the future.
Even though this threat is very much still real, if it goes away, it does seem like a focus on Canadian would be good policy in the long run anyways.
Yeah, absolutely good policy. And I would say to you that what we've seen right now has been a threat for many, many weeks. This started in November when the president-elect at that time started musing about a 25% tariff across the board on Canadian and Mexican goods exported into the United States. We have seen since then any number of demands from the president on all kinds of issues and fronts in terms of the kinds of concessions that he would like to extract from Canada. This isn't going to end. The tariff threat has a drastic impact on jobs and investment in our country, even without having the tariffs in place. And we've got 4 years of this kind of volatility. So we have to get our economic house in order in Canada.
Unifor National President Lana Payne, great to have you, and let us know if you hear back from the grocers.
I will indeed. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Mayor Olivia Chow was joined by representatives of City Council and the federal government this morning for a housing announcement.
The city has reached an agreement with Ottawa's help to secure the future of Artscape's facilities, which provide homes and studio spaces to Toronto's artist community. The mayor pointed to the long list of stars who hail from this city.
And before these artists were global sensations, many of them were struggling to get by. Today, life has never been more expensive, especially for artists. Rising costs, shutter venues, lost funding during the pandemic, it threatens the vibrant art scene.
The mayor stopped by the Propeller Art Gallery to announce a plan to keep that site and other Artscape facilities operating and to secure Artscape's affordable housing facilities. The nonprofit started receivership proceedings back in 2023.
The city's legal and real estate teams worked diligently, furiously throughout this process to ensure that artists and cultural spaces remained accessible and protected from displacement. And that's how we keep our community vibrant and wonderful. Responding to the receivership has been an all-of-city project, with city staff, members of council, members of the arts community, tenants, and many others coming together to make sure that these assets to the arts and community are protected.
The mayor also pointed to other investments in housing and the arts as she prepares to officially present her budget to City Council next week.
3 federal cabinet ministers are in Washington this week making Canada's pitch to avoid U.S. tariffs next month. They've been meeting with Republican lawmakers and business groups. This morning, one of those ministers says he thinks Canada's message is getting through.
You've heard a number of senators, including Senator Grassley, who's raised some concerns. We've heard now from a number of governors that are raising concerns, both about the tariffs and about the response from Canada in terms of things like, not allowing American liquor or tariffing American liquor coming into the country. So we are hearing more public expressions of concern. I will tell you that the business community is united in its view that this is not a good idea and it will create enormous challenges for American business. And they are making those points very clearly to folks in the administration. So I do think that, that the voices are going to get louder.
Canada's been given a 30-day reprieve on the U.S. tariffs. The 25% levies on all imports and 10% duty on Canadian energy have been delayed until at least March 4th. Prime Minister Trudeau will host a Canada-U.S. Economic Summit in Toronto tomorrow.
The ongoing tariff threat is weighing heavily on the federal Liberal leadership race.
Two of the leading candidates have chimed in. Let's bring in CTV's Scott Hurst with the very latest on the race. First, let's talk about Mark Carney. He's been out making announcements. What's the latest from him?
Nathan, really the threat of tariffs, as you mentioned, and ultimately the unpredictability of the Trump administration looming large over this Liberal leadership race. And that is reflected in many of these policies that we're seeing from really the two people considered the frontrunners in this race, Mark Carney and Chrystia Freeland. So as you mentioned, let's begin with Mark Carney and some of his policy announcements, including breaking down interprovincial trade barriers, diversifying our trading relationship, particularly on energy and security. And Carney has also pledged to hit the 2% GDP NATO target by the end of the decade. That is 2 years quicker than the current Trudeau plan. Of course, NATO spending has really caught the ire of many allies, not just the U.S., but of course now we've seen Donald Trump reference the fact and float the idea that he wants NATO allies to spend 5% of their GDP. So many of these policies reflecting in the overall threat that the tariffs still hold over Canada. And in previous announcements, we've heard from Carney that he plans to scrap the consumer carbon tax, instead trying to target major polluters. And you could expect this tariff threat to remain, as we might be once again facing this threat in early March, and Liberals choose their new candidate, choose their new leader on March 9th. So right around the same time, Nathan.
And what about Chrystia Freeland? What's she revealing about her platform?
Yeah, once again, a lot of this has to do with the tariff threat and the unpredictability of Donald Trump. As she has said before, everything is on the table in terms of retaliation and a response to these tariffs, but more specifically, making some policy announcements late yesterday, including dropping trade barriers, particularly on agriculture, transportation, and alcohol between provinces by leveraging federal transfers, but also streamlining foreign credential recognition to get more people working in the skilled trades and healthcare. Attracting investment as well was a key policy promise by making Canada's tax environment, as she puts it, more appealing for investment and fast-tracking projects, particularly in critical minerals, and also helping the trades workforce, she says, by promising to make trade schools free. And she as well previously had announced that she plans to scrap the consumer carbon tax as well, become incredibly controversial. Now, one thing, of course, looming large over all this, besides the threat of the tariffs, but a reality check when it comes to the Liberal leadership race. Whoever wins, obviously becoming Liberal leader, will become Prime Minister for potentially a short time, when we're expecting to go to a federal election. And whoever wins will have a huge hill to climb, at least when it comes to polling. For many months now, we've seen the Conservatives really riding high in the polls. So whoever becomes Liberal leader, and if we do go to a spring election, we'll have a tough hill to climb to catch the Conservatives at this point, Nathan.
Yeah, for sure. CTV's Scott Hurst with the latest on the federal Liberal leadership race. Thank you.
Thanks, Nathan.
Turning our attention below the border, Donald Trump is reiterating his proposal to take over the Gaza Strip and redevelop it without its 2.3 million Palestinian residents. Before attending a national prayer breakfast this morning, Trump said the Gaza Strip would be turned over to the United States by Israel when the fighting stops. The U.S. president says the Palestinians would have already been resettled in the region in far safer and more beautiful communities with new homes. Trump added America would work with development teams from around the world to begin construction on what he said would become one of the greatest developments of its kind. He says no U.S. soldiers would be needed. The proposal has been met by widespread opposition from a slew of countries. A former Canadian soldier who helped more than 100 people escape the Taliban before being captured himself is telling his story. CTV's Judy Trin spoke to the man known as Canadian Dave.
David Lavery returned to Afghanistan on Remembrance Day. His mission, to bring visas to 18 Afghans with Canadian ties and get them out. But he was arrested at Kabul airport.
Until I was actually handcuffed, blindfolded, and then put in a cell. That's when a lot of things changed right away. That's when you know your freedom is gone.
Nicknamed Canadian Dave, in 2021, when Afghanistan fell to the Taliban, he was on the walls of the airport searching for Canadians.
So this is all Canadians behind them?
To pull from the chaos. This time, while his wife searched for him, he was interrogated by the Taliban. They assumed he was a spy and threatened him with torture, then threw him into a basement cell.
and you could see human sweat oil stain where somebody would be, his back and his head would be up against the wall.
After Lavery's arrest, his wife June Ping and son Brent immediately reached out to other Canadian veterans and alerted consular officials.
I can, first of all, assure you that the Canadian government is taking very, very seriously this situation.
The family spoke directly with Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly. They were advised not to speak to media and worried that Lavery's past as a member of the Special Forces would put him at greater risk.
I have to thank, the Canadian government and the Qataris.
Canada, which does not have diplomatic ties with the Taliban, reached out to Qatari officials to negotiate for his release. 77 days later, on January 26, Lavery was put on a flight from Kabul to Doha.
I just ran for him. I just didn't feeling just never leave me alone,
And she hit me like a vice grip, it was bang, wouldn't let go, and it was very emotional.
Since 2010, the Laverys have operated a consulting company in Afghanistan to help foreigners navigate the murky and even dangerous politics of the country. Since the arrest, the family is now considering closing their office in Kabul. Judy Trin, CTV News, Ottawa.
Well, after a messy commute this morning, we're getting a break this afternoon from the active weather, but not the wind. We're looking at a gusty southwesterly wind as we head into that second half of our day that will bring temperatures up, but could blow some of that snow that's sitting on the ground around, so take care as you head out this afternoon. Coming up, I'll have a full look at your long-range forecast as we continue to warm up temporarily. Still dealing with a bit of a wind chill, though, this afternoon of -5. Your full forecast coming up after the break.
So did you have a slow drive to get into work today? Well, you're not alone. It was one of those mornings, but the big question is what's ahead for the afternoon rush? Now, for me, my drive was okay, but a lot of people had trouble coming in this morning.
You know what? I was out early. Yep, it was slower, not too bad, but I definitely heard around the newsroom and such people complaining. Yeah. It's not fun, especially when it hits right at the start of the day, so you do have to factor in that extra time.
I gave myself an extra 20, 25 minutes this morning, and I needed every single one of those minutes. It was just really wet for me. I come from downtown to come up towards Scarborough, but the closer I got to the east end, the slicker it got. So as temperatures kind of hovered around that freezing mark, that's where that transition to freezing rain took place. But the good news is into the afternoon, we get a little bit of a break. Weather is brought to you by the Presler Law Firm. Injury lawyers, you don't pay unless they win. Now, nice for skating now because we're done with the bulk of the active weather out there. So if you're brave enough to get out and hit the ice at Nathan Phillips Square on one of the many rinks we have around the GTA, it's not too bad temperature-wise, but the wind is going to pick up as we head into the afternoon, so factor that into your plans. It will be a little bit gusty out there. Temperature-wise, we're sitting at -2. It feels like -6. And as we head in towards kind of the end of our day today, we reach that daytime high much later on. So it does get warmer, but we take a while to get there. Still looking at those freezing drizzle advisories in place. They're slowly starting to drop, but just give yourself that time because, again, we're still hovering around that freezing mark, so that potential of freezing out there on the roads and on the sidewalks is still very much a thing. Into this afternoon, we'll sit at +1. It'll feel like -2. Everybody on the positive side. Again, that southwesterly wind doing a lot to help warm things up as we head throughout the day today, and everybody sits pretty comfortably above that seasonal point. Into this evening, we'll sit at -4. We should be at -9, but the winds will change direction. They become northwesterly overnight, so it gets quite cold. So the wind chill is around -12 for us here in the city and in the double digits for a good portion of the GTA. As we get in towards the day tomorrow, we see a little bit of a break before another round of active weather comes in just in time for your Saturday. There's that system that was causing all that mess early on this morning for a lot of people. It continues to push its way east. Behind it, we don't really get a full-on break as far as high pressure goes, but we will see a little bit of sunshine into the day tomorrow before another system stateside makes its way in. Timing out the rest of our day today, again, as we kind of reach this midpoint of our day, no sunshine, but a break from all of the snow and freeze and drizzle. And as we get in towards that evening commute for a lot of people, a much easier drive for a lot of folks, whether you're driving or taking transit or walking. As we head in towards the early part of our night, a few streamers off of Lake Huron and Georgian Bay, so a little lake effect snow in towards Owen Sound, Barrie and Bancroft. But for us here in the downtown core, the next round is a brief burst of flurries right around midnight. Into your morning commute on Friday, a little bit of sunshine out there. Still the slight chance of maybe some lake effect flurries, but that doesn't really impact the GTA or downtown core. We get into the afternoon again, a little west of the core, a little east of the core, some flurries, but nothing super organized, likely not to impact your day all that much. We head into your Friday night, and it's relatively clear, and then we get in towards Saturday. We watch another system on the way in. Not a major storm by any means, but just something to keep in mind for that second half of your Saturday. Now, it is a busy weekend, and if you're heading out to maybe some Super Bowl parties, you'll want to kind of factor in the weather to a certain extent, but overall, it's not too bad, at least on Sunday. So Saturday, it's a little bit of a mess. Friday, we're very seasonal. Saturday, fairly seasonal for the daytime high, but it gets a little mild as we head in towards the end of our weekend. That snow is likely into the second half of your Saturday, carries into your Sunday morning, and then we get a break Sunday afternoon. We hold on above seasonal into your Sunday, and then as we get in towards Monday, we kind of average out a little bit, so it's not all that bad if you're spending time outside or you maybe work outside. Very seasonal, very sunny. We do cool down pretty significantly, though, as we head in towards your Tuesday and Wednesday, and with that comes some cloud cover. So it's not terrible as we head into the second half of our day, but just take your time. Michelle, Nathan, I'll send it back to you.
Thanks, Jess. Thanks. Now to the surprise of a lifetime for a Toronto Maple Leafs fan.
He's in Seattle today to see the Leafs play, and that surprise got an extra assist from a former Maple Leafs player. CTV's Sean Leithong has the story.
He arrived at Pearson Airport not knowing why he's here, his mother having kept the secret.
It was good. We kept it as a surprise right up till we got here.
17-year-old Chad Stopa drove 4 hours with his family from Barry's Bay. He's an elite sledge hockey player, a member of Team Ontario and Team Canada. He's also a huge Leafs fan.
So he started playing sledge hockey and just fell in love with the sport, started watching it, and then he decided he was a Leafs fan, and nothing has wavered that love for the Leafs. So
Chad! So when he saw Leafs great Darcy Tucker calling his name, Stopa knew this was going to be a great day.
We're here to send you to Seattle to watch the Leafs playing the Krakens. How do you think about that? It's awesome. Is that awesome?
Chad, along with his parents Anita and Adam, as well as his brother Eli, are the recipients of the Air Canada fan flight, getting a chance to see his beloved Leafs on the road.
Honestly, it's fantastic. I love the Leafs. I love hockey, so it'll be a great opportunity to go and watch them.
Stopa has spina bifida and is living with type 1 diabetes. He found sledge hockey at an early age. Beyond playing, Stopa is an advocate for the game, running clinics for kids to be introduced to sledge hockey.
I mean, the game means a lot. Just getting to meet new people, getting to play with people with disabilities as well, getting to play the same game, it's just awesome.
The Air Canada fan flight selects one lucky fan of each of the 7 Canadian teams. Now he'll get to cheer on the Leafs in Seattle when they take on the Kraken.
You know, when I was playing, you'd see our fans in different venues all over the world, and to be able to have that opportunity to give this out today is pretty special.
Chad was nominated months ago through the Air Canada Foundation, which made it hard on his family.
I'm not a very good secret keeper, so it was very tough.
seeing his face was like the cherry on top.
Sean Leithong, CTV News.
It's a win tonight. Now, still to come, have you tried mailing a letter lately? How long did it take to get to your family or friends? CTV's Pat Foran has put the Postal Service to the test, and we'll have the results after this short break. Canada Post is cutting dozens of jobs as part of a corporate restructuring plan. In a statement to CTV News, the Crown Corporation says it has laid off 50 employees who were in management positions. Canada Post says about half of the impacted employees were in Ottawa and others were in Toronto and across the country. An official says the cuts are in response to significant financial and operational challenges. This comes after 20% of senior roles were cut in January and the lengthy postal workers strike during the holiday season.
And the cuts also come just 7 weeks after Canada Post ended a month-long strike, which brought the Postal Service to a standstill just before the holidays.
Even though the strike has been over since mid-December, the Postal Office still appears to have some issues working through the backlog. CTV's Pat Foran reports.
Canada Post went on strike in mid-November, and mail and parcel service came to a stop until workers were ordered back on the job December 17th. There was a huge backlog, and while the post office says it's getting back on track, many Canadians have noticed delays in receiving their mail. CTV News decided to conduct an experiment. Consumer Alert producer Farah Chandani wrote 6 letters to our friends and colleagues at CTV stations in Vancouver, Edmonton, Ottawa, Montreal, Halifax and one to myself in Toronto. It's Thursday, January the 9th, just after 10:30 in the morning, so let's see how long it takes these letters to get to where they're supposed to go. CTV Halifax was the first to receive their letter in 7 days, along with CTV Ottawa, which also had it arrive in 1 week. Next was CTV Edmonton, which received their letter in 9 days. Even though my letter was mailed in the GTA, it took 12 days for me to receive it in Toronto. CTV Vancouver didn't receive their letter until 19 days later, and CTV Montreal is still waiting for theirs. They have yet to receive it. When CTV News reached out to Canada Post, a spokesperson said, "We thank Canadians for their patience and that while we've stabilized our operations and taken care of the parcels in our network, we continue to work through higher volumes of mail."
When you actually have to deal with the backlog of all of the mail that had accumulated, it probably takes a good month to 2 months before things get back to usual.
A professor of economics is not surprised Canada Post has been running behind with its deliveries. Moshe Lander says despite fewer Canadians using the Postal Service, it continues to struggle to deliver mail in a timely manner.
Canada Post is in terminal decline. There's no way around it. The volume is falling in a way that it's never going to come back. The end is near.
Canada Post says it's working to continue to restore normal operations, but if you're expecting something in the mail, it's not clear how long you'll have to wait to get it. Pat Foran, CTV News.
We have a warning today about a troubling infection with cases on the rise in Canada.
And it may have taken the life of a young mother. CTV's Adrian Gobriel has the details.
Cradling his infant son as one of his twin daughters watches on, William Evans is still coming to terms with the sudden void his family is now facing.
How do you tell your 4-year-old girls that they're never going to see mommy again?
On January 17th, 29-year-old Selena Klinger-Evans began having contractions. She and her husband arrived here at this hospital in London, Ontario. Following a C-section, they welcomed the healthy arrival of a baby boy named Isaiah. 2 days later, the young mother died in hospital.
It baffles me that in 2025, a 29-year-old woman can die from an infection from childbirth.
Following the delivery, there were no signs that Klinger-Evans was battling an infection.
We, laughed and hung out while she ate, and he was great, she was great, the twins were great, everybody was having her, she didn't feel sick at all.
The rapid speed of her deterioration meant her parents and some of her 7 siblings didn't even have a chance to say goodbye.
By Saturday evening, it was not looking good. And then by Sunday morning, we get the news that she's gone.
The initial cause of death has been listed as Group A strep sepsis. In 2023, there were 4,600 cases of invasive Group A strep uncovered in Canada, a 40% increase from 2019. It's an infection that in rare cases can lead to death. It can also arise following a viral illness. Recent spikes in COVID-19 and RSV could in part be to blame.
It's probably causing sort of a perfect situation in which Group A strep post-viral infection can come in and cause disease as well.
There are conflicting reports that the 29-year-old may have been sick leading up to her delivery. Either way, her family wants Canadians to hear their story.
What will you share with your son, with your 2 daughters about their mom when they're older? That she loved them and that she was brilliant. She was beautiful inside and out. She was just perfect.
For now, any hope of clarity on this tragedy will have to wait. The family has been told it will be at least another 2 months before a coroner's report is completed. Adrian Gobriel, CTV News, Toronto.
Still to come, we'll meet 2 retailers who've made Buy Canadian their business.
Get Toronto's top stories, breaking news alerts, and watch live. Download the CTV News app.
Businesses in the city are already seeing the benefits of the Buy Canadian sentiment.
CTV's Beth McDonnell spoke with 2 local retailers about the changes they've experienced.
In East York, the machines are humming at the Great Canadian Socks Company. The outfitter has been making apparel to keep Canadians' feet comfortable since 1877. Today, 95% of the brands sold at its Toronto stores are also Canadian. And given the chaos surrounding U.S. tariffs, people are taking more notice.
We've definitely seen an uptick in people reaching out online and also in stores, so that's been great.
Sid Camasia is one of the owners. He says while there has been a large group of people who have sought out Canadian products, and it is a good selling point for his company, the latest spat has been a wake-up call with consumers.
I think this has really gotten people motivated to look for Canadian and be more conscious about where their goods come from, so I think it will last.
The most delicious dipped marshmallows for us.
Over in the beach, 100% of shopmakers' artisan goods are Canadian, with many of them made nearby in the neighborhood. The company rents space to the makers and has several stores in the GTA and across Canada.
All of our locations, all 16 of them, have seen an increase in foot traffic, an increase in spending in our stores, and that's wonderful news for our artisans.
Manager Jamie Baker says it's been lovely speaking with people about making mindful purchases.
It's a halfway shock. There's a little bit of anger, of course. There's a little bit of hurt. I think we're really seeing the full range of it.
Baker says with around 2/3 of Canadian businesses either small or medium-sized, supporting local does have an impact. Beth McDonnell, CTV News.
In other business news, cybersecurity researchers are sounding the alarm over a popular new artificial intelligence tool. Chinese AI company DeepSeek revealed a chatbot that generates responses to voice prompts similar to ChatGPT. A Canadian cybersecurity company called Ferut Security says it's found coding that could send DeepSeek user data to a state-owned entity in China. DeepSeek hasn't commented, and the analysis looked only at the chatbot website, not the popular app.
The NBA trade deadline is 3 o'clock this afternoon, and the Raptors have been active. Brandon Ingram was acquired by Toronto last night. The Pelicans' small forward is averaging 22 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists this season. New Orleans gets Canadian Kelly Olynyk, Bruce Brown, a 2026 first-round pick, and a second-round pick. And sources tell ESPN that Miami's P.J. Tucker has been traded to the Raptors, along with a second-round pick and cash. In exchange, Davion Mitchell is heading to the Heat.
The Raptors were in action against the Memphis Grizzlies last night.
The fewest pick and rolls of his career, John Moran. Mitchell fouled, continuation.
The Raps led after the first quarter, but it was all Memphis. After that, the Grizzlies ended up winning the game 138-107. The Raptors will be back on the court tomorrow to play the Oklahoma City Thunder.
The Jonas Brothers have been in Toronto in recent weeks working on a movie, and they surprised fans this week at a Camp Rock-themed trivia event.
That's the point. I think the best table wins. We didn't think it would be any good. And we did study in the car on the way here, just in case.
The trio says they realized the event was happening Tuesday night at Hemingway's in Yorkville, and that was just a few minutes away from their hotel, so they thought they'd stop by. The brothers said they were grateful for the enthusiastic welcome, calling their fans the best fans in the world.
Elton John is officially confirming reports he has new music on the way, announcing a collaboration with singer-songwriter Brandi Carlile.
Once we got going, Jesus.
The glass was shaking.
It happened so quickly. Finally, it all started to flow.
John and Carlile teamed up over 20 days in 2023 to write and record their new collaborative album, Who Believes in Angels. They also filmed the process for an accompanying short film. The title track is already out ahead of the album's release on April 4th. The singers will also perform a one-night-only show called An Evening with Elton John and Brandi Carlile next month in London.
The Toronto Wildlife Centre stepped in to help last week when a deer fell into wastewater in Pickering.
There's actually pools of water that are 30 feet deep, but then the way the system works, there's an overflow. And then the buck fortunately was able to find this overflow spot that actually was a shallow area, so it wasn't going to drown, but this is still a pretty intense situation.
With the assistance of facility staff, veterinarians with the Wildlife Centre stepped in to tranquilize the nearly 200-pound buck and transport him to safety. They then assessed him to make sure he wasn't suffering from hypothermia and to treat his wounds.
Once all that was done, we were comfortable with how dry, clean, and warm he was. We were able to reverse him. After what he's gone through, I'm sure that's a little bit of a rest that he needed to kind of gather his strength back up.
The Wildlife Center says they then transported the deer to the wild and monitored from a distance as he woke up and was reunited with his herd. Very nice.
That is the loveliest story. And we also have some good news. The freezing rain warning has ended.
We have a break, at least for us here in the GTA. Further east and west, they have some lingering advisories in place. But as Michelle mentioned, good news, we're done with those advisories. We are still holding on to some mist out there. It's still gray. It doesn't really get that much better, but we are done with the bulk of the really heavy stuff as we head throughout the rest of our day. It is -2, feeling like -6. Those southwesterly winds get gusty into the afternoon, but it's a southwesterly wind, so it's still relatively mild. Temperatures drop, though, as we head into the day tomorrow, but just back to a much more seasonal point before we look ahead to a bit of a messy start to the weekend.
All right, thank you, Jess. And that's it for CTV News at noon. Remember, you can get Toronto's breaking news all day long on CP24 and at ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Jessica Smith and the whole team here, have a pleasant afternoon. I'm Michelle Dubé.
And I'm Nathan Downer. Be sure to join us later for CTV News at 5 and 6. Have a great afternoon.